Welcome back to Beyond the Clue by Fong. Today, we delve into a true crime that shook America to its core. The story of Diane Downs. If the name Casey Anthony evokes outrage, then the name Diane Downs, it defies simple description. A mother who turned against her own children. Why? Ostensibly, because her lover didn't want them. But the truth, as always, is far more complex and disturbing. Join me as we unravel this chilling case. Be warned, the following narrative contains unsettling details. Viewer discretion is advised. This is Diane Downs, and these are her 3 children. A seemingly ordinary family portrait masking a horrifying truth. Diane Elizabeth Downs was born on the 7th of January, 1955, in Arizona. By all accounts, her parents were strict and conservative, instilling a rigid upbringing on Diane and her siblings. In her early years, Diane was considered a well-behaved child. However, adolescence brought rebellion and defiance, a stark contrast to her earlier compliance. Born Diane, she reportedly changed her name in 1969 at the age of 14. This marked a period of transformation. Short, bleached blonde hair, a dramatic shift in clothing style. Friends described a strong preoccupation with boys, a series of fleeting relationships that clashed sharply with her parents' strict views on teenage romance. At 16, Diane began dating Steve Downs, a local boy. Theirs was a turbulent relationship, punctuated by numerous breakups, yet they remained connected through their high school years and beyond. While Diane pursued higher education, Steve joined the Navy, embarking on a long-distance relationship filled with promises of fidelity. Promises that, for Diane, proved to be short-lived. University life exposed her to new attention, and her reported attraction to men led her to end things with Steve abruptly, initiating a string of new relationships. By her sophomore year, Diane was reportedly expelled from college due to alleged promiscuous behavior on campus. Returning home was reportedly a harsh reality for Diane, given her parents' strict nature. Steve Downs was also back in town during this period. Familiarity led them back together, culminating in a bold decision. They eloped. On the 13th of November, 1973, shortly after Diane turned 18, they were married. However, their marriage mirrored the instability of their courtship. Arguments over finances and Diane's alleged infidelity became frequent and intense. A year into their marriage, in 1974, their first daughter, Christy, was born. 6 months later, Diane enlisted in the Army, leaving her infant daughter in Steve's care. But the structured environment of the military was reportedly ill-suited for Diane's nature. She was discharged after only 3 weeks, citing concerns for her daughter and personal health issues, reasons that were likely a fabrication. When Christy was 2, Diane gave birth to a second daughter, Cher. With 2 young daughters and financial constraints, Steve made the decision to undergo a vasectomy. Shortly thereafter, Diane became pregnant again. Steve knew the child wasn't his, the result of Diane's continued infidelity. This pregnancy reportedly did not result in a live birth. Despite the ensuing conflict, they remained together. Years passed, and they both found employment at the same company. However, Diane's involvement with other men, including colleagues, reportedly continued. In 1979, Diane became pregnant once more. This time, she chose to carry the pregnancy to term, naming the child Danny. In what some might see as an act of incredible forgiveness, Steve reportedly accepted Danny as his own, despite knowing he was not the biological father. In 1980, after 7 years of a tumultuous marriage and 3 children, Diane and Steve divorced. Post-divorce, Diane reportedly engaged in numerous relationships. Custody of the young children was granted to her. While many mothers fight fiercely for their children, for Diane, motherhood seemed to become an increasing burden. Around 1982, she began a relationship with a colleague, Robert Nicker, known as Nick. Robert would become a central figure in Diane's life. Like Diane, Robert had experienced a failed relationship. Diane reportedly claimed that Robert was the love of her life, the deepest connection she had ever known. However, this intense affection reportedly drove Robert away. He described the relationship as toxic, controlling, and possessive. In ending the relationship, Robert cited another significant factor: Diane's 3 children. Having decided against having children himself, he reportedly felt unable to take on the responsibility of raising hers. It was a decision he felt was necessary. Robert's rejection reportedly left Diane devastated and filled with a bitter resentment, not towards Robert, but tragically, towards her own children. Not long after, Diane moved with her 3 children to Creswell, Oregon, a small, close-knit town where neighbors knew one another. Despite the physical distance, Diane's obsession with Robert reportedly persisted. She reportedly made numerous attempts to contact him, even going to his home, but Robert remained resolute in his decision to end their relationship. Letters penned by Diane were reportedly returned unopened, each rejection fueling her despair. By 1983, Diane's nearly 9-year-old daughter Christy often bore the responsibility of caring for her younger siblings in their mother's absence. Neighbors reportedly observed the children looking hungry and inadequately dressed, but these signs of neglect foreshadowed a far greater tragedy that would unfold. On the night of Thursday, May 19, 1983, on that fateful night, Diane took her 3 children to a friend's house, staying until approximately 9:30 p.m., late for 3-year-old Danny. As they drove home, Diane was behind the wheel, 8-year-old Cher in the front passenger seat, and Christy and Danny in the back, reportedly taking an unfamiliar route after the children had fallen asleep. The car radio played a popular tune. As they drove along a quiet stretch of road near Springfield, they encountered a man hitchhiking. It was 10 p.m. Diane pulled over and exited the vehicle, leaving her sleeping children inside. As she approached the man, he demanded her car keys. Sensing danger, she resisted. The man produced a gun and fired multiple shots, one striking Diane's arm. She reportedly struggled, got back into the car, and sped to the hospital. This was Diane's initial account to the authorities. By the time they reached the emergency room, 8-year-old Cher was dead. Christy and Danny were critically wounded. Diane's arm injury was the least severe, yet she reportedly exhibited the most dramatic reaction. The scene at the hospital was one of immediate shock and horror. A mother and 3 children riddled with bullets, their car stained with blood. Notably, Diane had not even called the police. As news of the seemingly random attack spread, the American public felt an outpouring of sympathy for Diane and outrage towards the unknown assailant. But investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies in Diane's behavior. Her demeanor was reportedly detached, almost emotionless. She allegedly stated that if her children were to die, she hoped it would be swift and painless. Upon being informed of Cher's death, her reaction appeared strangely subdued, and when told that Danny might be paralyzed, she reportedly expressed confusion, stating she thought the bullet had struck his heart. Furthermore, upon their arrival at the hospital, medical staff observed that Diane had bandaged her own arm with a clean handkerchief, while her severely injured children lay unattended in the back seat. The lack of significant bloodstains on Diane's clothing, beyond her arm wound, also raised immediate red flags. A mother's instinct in such a situation would likely be to hold and comfort her children. Yet, Diane's clothes were relatively clean. Her apparent concern for the damaged vehicle over the well-being of her children further fueled suspicion. These initial observations sowed the seeds of doubt in the minds of the investigators. Adding to the growing suspicion was Diane's behavior when she appeared on television. Footage captured her adjusting her hair and makeup in the car before the interview, seemingly more concerned with her appearance than the gravity of the situation. Her demeanor during the interview itself, which included moments of inappropriate smiling, further alienated the public. The composite sketch of the supposed hitchhiker, based on Diane's description, a man with a bushy beard and hair, yielded no credible leads. During subsequent police interviews, Diane's narrative began to shift and contradict itself, a telltale sign of deception. She reportedly became agitated and defensive when investigators pressed her on inconsistencies and the possibility of her own involvement. Her explanations grew increasingly convoluted and unbelievable. Meanwhile, her eldest daughter, Christy, though severely injured and barely conscious, would become the key to unlocking the truth. During one of Diane's visits to the hospital, Christy's heart rate monitor spiked dramatically upon seeing her mother, indicating a profound fear. Witnesses who had been driving behind Diane's car on the night of the shooting testified that she had been driving remarkably slowly, contradicting her claim of rushing her injured children to the hospital. This slow speed suggested a deliberate act to allow her children to bleed out. While the alleged murder weapon was never recovered, investigators found spent shell casings in Diane's home that matched those found at the crime scene. Furthermore, Diane's diary entries revealed a deep obsession with Robert Nicker and repeated mentions of his desire not to have children, providing a chilling motive. Faced with mounting contradictions and physical evidence, investigators knew they needed the testimony of the surviving witness, Christy. Obtaining her account was a slow and delicate process due to the profound trauma she had endured. A child psychologist worked patiently with Christy, building trust over several days. Eventually, the therapist devised a method for Christy to communicate. She was asked to write the name of the person who had shot her on a piece of paper, with the option to either give it to the police or burn it. This process was repeated multiple times. Finally, one day, Christy chose to hand the paper to the authorities. Scrawled on the paper were two devastating words: "My mother." The facade of the hitchhiker shattered. The shooter was Diane Downs. 9 months after the horrific events, on the 28th of February, 1984, Diane Downs was arrested. During the trial, Diane reportedly displayed bizarre behavior, including appearing pregnant, claiming it was out of grief for her deceased daughter. The father's identity remained unconfirmed, leading to speculation that it was a calculated attempt to sway the jury. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Diane maintained her innocence. Her conviction on multiple charges, including murder, resulted in a sentence of life in prison plus 50 years. In a dramatic turn, Diane escaped from prison in July 1987 but was recaptured 11 days later, underscoring her potential for danger. Christy and Danny were eventually adopted by the prosecuting attorney in Diane's case and were raised in a loving and stable environment. Danny remained paralyzed, and Christy continued to struggle with a speech impediment, but they found a measure of peace away from the public eye. Nearly 4 decades have passed since this horrific crime. 10 days before her final sentencing, Diane gave birth to a daughter, Amy Elizabeth, who was immediately placed for adoption and later renamed Becky. Becky grew up unaware of her biological mother's identity until the age of 11, when she discovered the shocking truth. This revelation had a profound and understandably negative impact on her young life. She later reconnected with Diane in prison, but the relationship was ultimately damaging and short-lived. Becky has since found stability and now works in a helping profession. Diane Downs, now in her late 62nd, remains incarcerated in California, continuing to deny her guilt and showing no remorse for the devastating consequences of her actions. The story of Diane Downs is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can reside within. What are your thoughts on this disturbing case? Share your opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to suggest other true crime stories you'd like me to explore on Beyond the Clue by Fong. Thank you for watching. Until next time.